You've worked with Pixar for quite a while now, but what was it about Lightyear that really drew you to want to be a part of the project?
I mean, in a nutshell, everything, right? But it's like I am a fan of first and foremost like big machines, mechanics, spaceships, robots, trains, like anything that moves, right, or that's made out of metal, whatever. So we don't make movies with a lot of that stuff typically at Pixar, right? Like we'll definitely have some of that stuff, but like Incredibles or Wally maybe, but this is kind of the first film we've done where it's very vehicle centric. It's all about the built world, and there's a lot of it, right? And that's the stuff that I personally geek out over as an artist and just like just a nerd, right? And so that was the thing that was the big draw for me on the film. Even before I was on it as an art director, I was like, I want to be a part of that. I want to make spaceships and cool stuff. So
I know in the presentation last week, it was shown that you and the team all went to NASA to get, a firsthand experience with everything and sort of help influence your style. But how much would you say you were influenced directly by that versus some of your favorite machinery from the sci-fi genre in general?
Yeah. It was a little bit of everything. Because I think the first place you're making a sci-fi movie, I mean, you obviously want to take a look at the sci-fi that's been done, right? And so we were very influenced, especially by our films, our favorite films from the 70s and 80s, especially, and that was a look that we were kind of interested in happening just in the real world from the 70s and 80s. We kind of love the look of the technology, just the chunk and the colors from that time is just really interesting. And then honestly, the real world stuff, like the NASA stuff and the aerospace stuff, it feeds right into that, right? Because you look at cockpits. I mean, even modern cockpits, right? In a space shuttle or a jet fighter or whatever. Like there's a lot of stuff in there, but you look at from the 70s and 80s, especially like the interior of like the lunar lander or a capsule or something. There's all this stuff, and there isn't some designer that went over and polished this console or anything like that. It's all exposed, stuff, knobs and buttons and levers, and the bigger the dial is, the more it has to do with life support, and like all that kind of interesting kind of tactile flavor that is in the real stuff. It was exactly what we were after, with the world that we were trying to make. Even though it's like a science fiction world, we wanted there to be that element of realism there. So the NASA stuff was critical in terms of like getting that flavor, like kind of a little bit of a NASA punk theming was definitely a little bit of the DNA of our look.
So what would you say was some of the biggest creative challenges for you melding those two drastic, or I wouldn't say drastic, but those two different styles together? What would you
Mm-hmm.
say were some of your biggest creative challenges there?
I think the bigger creative challenge would have been like making sure that stuff was jiving with Buzz Lightyear, right? Is like we like the look that we were establishing for the film is like one that we were excited and passionate about and that looked cool, but we also wanted to make sure that it's like a fit with Buzz, and that like the characters are melding with the world around them. And I think a big part of that was like you look at Buzz and there's this awesome, he's a toy, right? But even if he's not a toy, there's this awesome toy like design aesthetic to his armor. It's green and purple and white, it's like this really bold color choices, all these big colorful buttons on it. And there's just a chunk to him that is kind of something that we could draw from. So I think it was kind of one of those things where we have these looks that we're inspired by, and then it was always like a cool opportunity. It's like, oh, let's throw some big fat like red and blue buttons over here on top of that, and it kind of ties in with the look of the armor and the style of him. Or like let's make some interesting bold color choices over here that makes it feel or world feel like almost like a toyified, slightly toyified version of a real place that kind of feels exciting and kind of dovetails with that, that source material. This kind of was kind of part of that.
So I know that Angus has frequently referred to Star Wars as his biggest point of influence for an inspiration for this film, which I love. I mean, a Star Wars shirt on right now. But for you, since you were coming from it from the machine side of things, I mean, what would you
Mm-hmm.
say were some of your biggest influences and inspirations?
Sure. I mean, like, I guess in terms of just real world stuff, I any kind of real world technology is something that I kind of really like. I'm a big fan of trains. I'm a model railroader, and like especially like big diesel locomotives from the 60s and 70s. You know, these big powerful machines that just have grills and fans and panels all over them, right? And they're pulling hundreds of thousands of tons of material, right? So they're like there's a presence to that stuff, and the noise that it makes that it just is exciting, that you want stuff to feel purposeful and big and important that way. So like that's one thing. Military technology is another, like aerospace, you know, tanks and like all that stuff is just like you look at, like, you know, just anything, you just go on, you know, Google Images and find pictures of tanks, and there's just so much cool detail and stuff. You can just be like, ooh, I want to kind of take bits of all of this to kind of design around, you know. Or you take the Apollo era, right? The Saturn V rocket, like one of the coolest machines ever built. Like literally, like, what is it? Like 7 million horsepower or something? Like, what does that number even mean? Like it is just like burning literally like tons of fuel every second to break, you know, orbit with the Earth. Like that stuff is just so cool, and there's a purpose for it, and the purpose is big. You know, it's big stuff that these machines are doing, and so like looking at the design of them and is like, what is the aesthetic or of the machinery that allows this machine to do what it does. So yeah, it's kind of all of those things. Sorry, I'm kind of like running at the mouth here, but it's like that's that, all that kind of stuff.
No reason to be sorry. You're passionate about it. I love it. I want to hear it all. So one of the cool things about this film, if I saw correctly, is that this is your first time as a set arts director, not just working on that field in general. So what was that like for you, getting to add that title to the resume with this film?
I mean, it was obviously a huge honor, and it was kind of like I went through phases where it was like it was super exciting, and then super terrifying, and then super exciting again, right? Because you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna get to, you know, be a part of realizing this exciting world that's full of all this awesome stuff, and it's exactly the kind of stuff that I love. And so there's that excitement, and then you hit the phase where you're kind of like, how in the world are we going to do all this? The magnitude of the challenge in front of you, and then of course, you know, you start making stuff, and you kind of work with the director, and you start finding the language and the world that you're going to craft, and then all these amazing people are coming on and helping to create it, and then it immediately goes back to like, oh man, we're just having fun. Like I'm getting paid to draw spaceships all day, you know. So it's like, you know, who can complain about that?
If you love it, you can't complain about it. You'll never work a day in your life if you do what you love.
It's definitely true.
So for my final question, I know that this was also a film that unfortunately was hit mid-production with the pandemic. So I mean, what was that like for you, having to work on this remotely? What was that experience like for you?
I mean, it's definitely like a crazy shift, right? We went through, I'm sure, all of the kind of trials and tribulations that everybody else kind of like went through. I think that after adjusting to the weirdness of kind of making an entire movie from home, there was kind of an other side to that coin, where there was a closeness that came from it, where our team was just it's almost like we were all in it together, right? And you're kind of that way anyways on any film, you know. It is kind of like a little family on any particular film you work on, but in this one you had the outside, you know, situation as well, that it really felt like, you know, we were kind of, again, all in the trench together making this thing. And I do think it like turned into this sort of camaraderie that we were just like, almost like, we're going to show the world that we can not only, like, you know, make this movie, you know, in pandemic times remotely, we're going to make it the best gosh darn movie that you've ever seen come out of our movie, or out of our studio, right? So yeah, there was obviously huge challenge with it. I do think that there was also a flip side, and there's some positivity that came out of it, and the result where it's like, yeah, it was just kind of up against a wall, and you have to do the thing, and everybody kind of pulled together in a really awesome way.
Well, I think from what I've seen so far that, yeah, you guys came together and did an incredible job. I look forward to seeing the rest and spreading the word about it. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely, Grant. It was a blast. Thanks, man.